I've been using GNOME for more than a decade now, ever since I tried installing SteamOS 2.0 beta on my main PC. SteamOS at that time was built on top of Debian with GNOME 3.0, and I genuinely liked that user interface. Then I had a short phase in my life when I was using Ubuntu's Unity on the laptop I bought for university. And then I switched to PopOS and went back to GNOME, both on my laptop and my desktop PC. And when I finally decided to replace it with Arch in 2022, basically 4 years ago, I once again decided to stick to GNOME, because I love GNOME. It is clean, elegant and minimalistic desktop environment that doesn't look like anything else in the world. But roughly about 6-7 years ago, the GNOME team began prioritizing Wayland support, and by GNOME 49 it became the default session. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, Wayland is a modern display server protocol that was designed as a replacement for X11. The shift from X11 to Wayland though was disruptive to say the least, because back in the days when they began working on it, lots of pieces of the puzzle were missing. For a really long time, features like screen recording and drag and drop were not working properly under the Wayland session. Hell, even basic stuff like keyboard layout switching were broken on GNOME until like GNOME 48, and third-party applications that were not designed with Wayland in mind acted like crazy. But that was okay, because a few years ago nobody ever forced me to use Wayland. I knew it was an early stage of development, I accepted it, and was just using X11 on my Arch happily every single day. Until September 2025, when the GNOME team disabled X11 session code completely, and after that GNOME became a hot mess. As someone who's been using Linux on my workstation for real everyday work, upgrading from GNOME 48 to GNOME 49 felt like a disaster. I do most of my work in DaVinci Resolve, so the first thing I noticed obviously was drag and drop support, or should I say lack of it. For some reason, such a basic feature as drag and drop that was definitely available on GNOME under the Xorg was no longer working consistently on Wayland. In some applications like DaVinci Resolve, it wasn't working at all. In a few other apps like GIMP, it only wasn't working occasionally, which is still weird because I thought GIMP supports Wayland natively. I thought, well, perhaps I'm doing something wrong, maybe there is a solution, so I went googling and immediately felt lucky, because I learned that for some people dragging a file from the file manager to an X-Wayland window can make GNOME session crash. Stable? That's for horses. By the way, 9 months later, drag and drop support is still not fixed in GNOME 50, I guess it's just not a priority. Oh, but that is only half of the problem, because NVIDIA support for Wayland is also a mess, and if something relies on NVIDIA drivers, which in my case is video rendering, it would also be borked on GNOME, thanks to the brilliant decision to disable X11 completely. I've encountered an enormous amount of visual glitches in DaVinci Resolve since upgrading to GNOME 49, none of which were happening on Xorg. But most importantly, I got bombarded countless times with errors saying that the GPU memory is full, which almost always been resulting with a crash. Look, I switched to Linux many years ago because it was providing a much better experience than Windows did, including better performance and faster rendering times in DaVinci Resolve, which as a video editor I valued the most. Almost every single video you see on this channel, every single YouTube short I've posted online, was edited on Linux in DaVinci Resolve on GNOME under the X11 session. But now with GNOME 50 there is only Wayland, and with Wayland there is no chances I can edit videos on this setup. And even if editing were possible, I still couldn't check my videos because Totem, the GNOME video app, stopped working after the transition to Wayland. I've also experienced random UI freezes, which I later learned were common among us, NVIDIA users. Of course you can blame NVIDIA for the lack of proper Wayland support, true, but if X11 was still enabled I wouldn't have this problem in the first place. Also, GNOME is probably the most user-hostile and counterintuitive desktop environment on the market right now. Anyone who's been using GNOME before knows that it's very opinionated DE with tight design guidelines and little to no customization options out of the box. Wanna change the system font? For that you would have to install a separate utility. Wanna change the color of the top bar? You gotta need extension for that. Don't like the appearance and the behavior of dash panel? Oh, to fix that you would have to install up to 3 different extensions. Wanna set your own dual-themed wallpaper? Good luck with that. None of those things are customizable through the official settings app. You have to look for a third-party tools or extensions or themes to set everything to your preference. During the decade of using GNOME, I definitely learned my way around it and got used to avoiding these UI UX hostilities as if they were something normal. except they were not. For example, as someone who was switching to Linux from Windows, I prefer to switch my keyboard layouts with key combination Alt+Shift, mainly because of my muscle memory. That's what I was used to on Windows. But GNOME simply doesn't allow you to set the layout switching shortcut to Alt+Shift in the Settings app. Instead, you have to install a separate utility which will show you a very ugly menu with a vertical list with empty with empty checkboxes of all possible keystrokes that can't be used to switch between different languages. Why? How can I convince my Windows friends that Linux is more intuitive and convenient if I had to install a separate app just to change a keyboard shortcut? Oh, and because this separate utility was developed with X11 in mind, it also doesn't really go well with Wayland. And that's why alternating between different languages using Alt+Shift didn't really work properly on Wayland until like GNOME 48. Basically, the icon in the top right corner wasn't changing at all, and the language switching itself was inconsistent as hell. And guess what? They managed to break it again in GNOME 49.1, and they made it even worse, because in version 49.1, for some reason pressing Alt+Shift was crushing the whole session. Can you imagine me not being able to send a message to my boss from my computer or edit my videos because I had a naive thought that upgrading to a new version of GNOME would be a safe move? And they still didn't fix language switching in GNOME 50. Like right now, in 2026, you still can't set Alt+Shift as a preferred shortcut in the Settings app. You still have to install GNOME tweaks to set a custom keystroke for switching keyboard layout. And while this exact combination of Alt+Shift seems to be working fine in GNOME 50, other keystrokes from this list still not working properly. Like, if you're switching from macOS and you wanna select Ctrl+Space from this list, you'd have to deal with basically the same bug that was happening a few years ago on GNOME 47. I tested this on GNOME 50, and when I press Ctrl+Space, the top right layout icon just isn't changing at all. And the switching between one layout and the other can't be described as inconsistent. Sometimes you have to press the shortcut twice to change the layout, sometimes once, and you have no idea which language you're going to type in, because the icon in the top right corner always stays the same, meaning that any trivial typing case like logging in from the lock screen or using an app with layout sensitive shortcuts will not be a pleasant experience. Okay, I can't edit videos on GNOME anymore, but who cares about having a job when we are all going to be replaced by AI? At least I can spend some quality time on my PC playing Arc Raiders with my friends. Oh, yeah, right. Steam doesn't have native Wayland client yet, so it sometimes just doesn't appear on the screen at all, and sometimes it launches without displaying window decorations, because who the hell needs them? Now, this particular problem is not exclusive to GNOME, it is a Steam client bug that is happening under the Wayland session on other desktop environments as well. I double-checked that. Same with drag and drop support, which is still incomplete even on KDE. But on other desktop environments I can at least start my session under the Xorg, whereas on GNOME this option is non-existent. Before GNOME 49, when I was dealing with bugs, I could always reboot into X11 and see if the issue I'm facing is still present or not. That allowed me to pinpoint the exact cause of the problem. But now when I hear audio glitches or if the app is not working properly, I can't know for sure if the problem is caused by the application itself, or maybe it's X-Wayland going crazy, or the problem is not related to the app at all, maybe it's NVIDIA drivers to blame. Again, on GNOME 48 I could at least somewhat reliably detect what is likely to cause a problem. Now the process of troubleshooting GNOME has become a real pain in my ass. Look, the main purpose of troubleshooting is to find a solution, to trace what's going wrong and eventually fix it to have a better working system in the end. It doesn't even matter, I tried so hard. Sorry. But when the problem is related to NVIDIA drivers which I have no control over, or it's just GNOME developers pushing system crash and bug to the release build, there's no chances I can fix it myself. I've been always preaching on this channel that Linux is going to be as stable as you want it to be, but with GNOME 50 that is not the case. And the moment you learn that you can't fix a problem yourself, the whole process of troubleshooting quickly turns into a frustratingly meaningless task. And oh god, there are lots of things to troubleshoot because the quality of GNOME updates has dropped significantly. Sometimes GNOME fails to display icons of launched applications. For some unknown reason, Skyrim or any other Steam game, or even DaVinci Resolve, look fine in the app menu, but the moment I click on them they spawn a window that goes into the dark with the placeholder icon, instead of the actual correct icon of the app. This is getting ridiculous, because sometimes I can't tell the difference between 3 opened apps and I have to move my mouse cursor over to them to see which icon stands for which app. The system monitor in GNOME 50 is also plagued with this issue. There are literally no icons even for the most of the system processes, and for some reason the Steam icon is now replaced with Battle Brothers. Like, why? What do you mean I need to run a script posted by a random guy on GitHub to fix my system issues? What am I using? A Microsoft product? Scaling settings have also been broken in GNOME for years. Any app launched through Wine appears to be comically small, and when I try to take a screenshot with a mouse pointer in it, it appears to be comically huge. And plus, GNOME is still GNOME, you have to rely on extensions to customize it to your own preference, and who knows how many of them will work after the system update. Spoiler alert, none of them usually do. Since I'm a single monitor enjoyer, my whole workflow relies on extensions like Automove Windows and Dash to Dock. They have millions of downloads on the extension's webpage, so seeing them being disabled after every single major update makes me wonder why the functionality is not the part of the GNOME Settings app. Like, incorporating these extensions directly into GNOME would significantly improve user experience of hundreds of thousands of people that use Linux every day. But instead, in 2026 we're still trying to figure out language switching. Honestly, it feels like GNOME is stagnating. This footage you see on screen is dated December 2025, March 2026, April 2026, May 2026. I've already upgraded to GNOME 50, but I still face the same issues over and over again. I'm tired, boss. Okay, this video is not a personal attack on anybody from the GNOME's team. Free and open source developers are understaffed, probably underpaid and overpressured. Like, I don't want to spread hate towards open source developers, and I'm grateful to them because they've basically were providing me with work in desktop environment for years, completely free of charge. And I do believe that they've made the decision to disable X11 session code in good faith, hoping that even if things get worse, eventually they might get a lot better. However, as a YouTuber, I have responsibility to put my money where my mouth is. I make a living by writing tech reviews, I edit lots of photos and obviously edit tons of footage every week. And GNOME, in the current stage of Wayland development, does not allow me to do my professional work on Linux. Even though a year ago I had zero problems with my setup on X11. I can't write my own stuff, I can't edit videos, I experience frustration every time drag and drop is not working and buttons becoming unresponsive randomly in photo editing software. I can't promote Linux and tell people that it works great when in reality I fear that switching my keyboard layout would break my computer. I can't shout Hosanna for the gaming on Linux if my Steam client is not rendering properly under the Wayland session. Now, I totally understand that there are development reasons for phasing out X11. I also believe that Wayland is the future of the Linux desktop, but moving too fast on the Wayland when nothing really works hurts the perception of Linux. GNOME is being shipped as a default desktop environment across many major Linux distros, including Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, Vanilla OS and RHEL, and this is what most people are going to get as a first taste of Linux. We can't afford the luxury of throwing critical errors in the face of our user base, especially since more than 70% of all PC gamers own Nvidia GPU. If we really want Linux market share to go up, we have to be ready to ship both Wayland and X11 to provide the best experience out of the box. And I have no enthusiasm to promote something that out of the box looks like this. So what I'm gonna do next? Well, I can try to roll back my Arch installation to GNOME 48 and preserve the X11 session, but that is not an option for me, because in that case I will no longer be able to install the latest drivers and other stuff that I would be happy to try. If I want to be a Linux YouTuber, if I want to lead by my example, I should not shy away from using Arch Linux as it is, as any normal person would be trying to use it after watching my videos. I can try switching to another desktop environment like Mate or KDE. But that will only save me in the short term, because sooner or later these projects will also ditch X11 completely. And don't forget about Nvidia. Even if things would be a lot better for me on KDE, I would still have to deal with GPU related issues caused by Nvidia drivers under the Wayland session. So there is no guarantee that any of these options will work in the long run, but I have to try anyway. Given the fact that I don't want to go back to Windows, I've made the decision to remove GNOME from my system entirely and switch to KDE. I also bought myself a Mac Mini, just in case I won't be able to restore my editing workflow on Linux. This thing truly deserves a separate video because I'm completely blown away by how good macOS is. and I don't want to use GNOME anymore. I just can't do it. This whole Wayland transition left me in shambles. During the last 6 months, I witnessed how quickly my system went from working perfectly fine to a hot mess. And all that happened just because some developers were confident enough to remove a display server crucial to my workflow. Of course, I'm not entitled to their time and attention, and they have all the rights to do whatever they want with their project, but I won't risk my professional reputation, my sanity, and personal income by using GNOME on my production machine ever again. This was Reluctant Anarchist, and I have nothing left to say.